if you look at it, if you take the top 20 companies in US, that's the first list over here, and the top 20 companies in Europe, you'll see that there are 5 retail players. Now you have Walmart, Costco, Hermes, LVMH, and Inditex. So you have 2 value retailers, you have 2 luxury brands, and you have a fast fashion brand. But if you see, these value retail brands are leaps and bounds ahead of the luxury brands also. So what are they doing and what are they doing right? Hi, good evening. So today's topic is value retail, and we are going to discuss whether it's an expensive bargain. So if I was to take, say, a paper ball, couple of paper balls, okay, and just randomly throw it at this crowd, it is bound to hit a fairly large amount of people. The same is true with Indian retail space, right? India is a overpopulated, highly heterogeneous crowd. So even if you have a reasonable product that's not a dud, you'll be able to get reasonable sales out of it. It's the reason why we have so many D2C brands that are coming up with niche categories selling only white shirts. They sell the best white shirts to you. And lots of smaller categories, right? And you also have a huge unorganized space with these small vendors catering to the micro needs of consumers in tier 3, tier 4 cities. So India has a lot of opportunities. But that being said, retail is simple, not easy. It's relatively simple to start a store. It does not require that much. But to actually be able to sustain it and grow it over a large period of time, now that requires a lot. And again, right, your victory is just not given just because you have been in it for a long time. Ronak had done a presentation on offline retail about 7 years ago. And in the first half of his presentation, he talked about the gloom in offline retail, all the problems that are going on over there. During that period, there were a lot of bankruptcies happening in the US space. We was discussing all the negatives. Kya ho raha hai? What is going wrong? You have these big retailers who have existed for such a long time. Why are they going bankrupt? Ho kya raha hai? You have even had more like Macy's is in trouble. Sears has filed for bankruptcy. You have Forever 21. So again, right, even having decades of experience does not guarantee your victory. So retail is a hard space. And retail is a war that's fought every single day. Just because you were good 20 years ago does not mean that you will still continue to survive. You have to be continuously relevant to your consumers. Your consumer needs are changing every single day. Just because someone bought from you today does not mean that they'll buy from you tomorrow. The trends are ever evolving, especially with the onset of social media. It has gotten even faster, right? And the retailers have to adopt to that speed. Now, why are we looking at it if everything is so bad? If you look at it, if you take the top 20 companies in US, that's the first list over here, and the top 20 companies in Europe, you'll see that there are 5 retail players. Now you have Walmart, Costco, Hermes, LVMH, and Inditex. So you have 2 value retailers, you have 2 luxury brands, and you have a fast fashion brand. But if you see, these value retail brands are leaps and bounds ahead of the luxury brands also. So what are they doing and what are they doing right? So if you win the value retail game, it can actually become it's huge market. So today we'll discuss about value retail. Why does it exist? Who are its customers? What's the target? What are the strategies that they apply? And the strategies get so interesting. And overall, where do we stand in terms of valuation of these retail companies? Now, coming to the first question, who are the customers of these people? If you take Walmart and Costco, an average customer of Walmart has a lower income than the national average of the US. While for Costco, again, Costco gives better value than even Walmart, but in a wholesale model. Costco's average customer has a higher income than the national average for the US. So value is just not limited to the bottom of the pyramid. Everyone loves value. And this also makes it very funny. It's like even true value is for the rich. It's a rich man's luxury. Uh, so again, value has a larger stand. And so while I was going down the value rabbit hole, these are some of the books that I read. So you have to read Sam Walton that talks about the Walmart journey. There's Joe Colombo with his book on becoming Trader Joe is also quite good. But the best one of the lot is Saul Price. Now, any US retailer that you read about, everyone will talk about Saul Price and how he's the father of retail and how they have all borrowed and stolen ideas from him. So I want to highlight some of the strategies that they've set. So uh, with Saul Price, so he started FedMart and then Price Club, and Price Club was later merged with Costco. Saul Price, kind of, you can take that book as what Costco is today. So it talks about Costco. Both Saul Price book and Becoming Trader Joe, they talk about having they want to play their employees very well. They believe in this saying, there's this adage. It basically says, if you pay peanuts, you're going to get monkeys. So Saul Price and Joe Colomb really believed in that. And they believe in playing their employees, the low level employees, really well. If you see Costco's average employee salary is quite high compared to that of any other retailer. They also believe in having less SKUs. So while someone like a Walmart who runs like super centers, they would have like 120,000 SKUs. A Costco would have around 3,200 SKUs, and a Trader Joe, much smaller format, but about 1,500 SKUs. In a more square footage term, like Walmart would typically have one SKU per square feet. Your Trader Joe, they keep one SKU per 5 square feet, and Costco would keep about one SKU per 20 square feet. So, we're going to keep minimum number of SKUs. Every SKU should earn the right to be on the shelf, and basically not get that many options, because again the cost that comes with handling those extra SKUs becomes really high. In value, it's all about controlling your operating costs, and we'll discuss that later also. So that's one of the things that they have done. Another thing is private label. So again, in Trader Joe, they've focused on differentiating themselves through private labels. And even in Costco, the Kirkland brand is quite huge. It's about like $80 billion in sales. Now, if you look at the retail space in India, there are two ways to pay the retail story. Either you can pay it at the value end, or you can play it at the premium end. So when you're at the value end, the thing is your gross margins are really, really low. So only way you can win that game is by absolutely controlling your operating expense. On the premium end, you have a much higher gross margin, so you're left with more operating costs that can be shifted towards brand building. So you go one way. You either control your operating costs and become a value player, or you go and build your brands and create a more premium brand. So in the Indian space, when I looked at the Indian value space, there was something very interesting going on over here. So while most of our legacy players have been growing at like 4-5% for the last 5 years, here you have Zudio that's growing at 87.3%. What is going on over there? And even if you look at the value players that we have, most of them are like 15 to 25%. That's also quite high compared to these numbers. So what is going on? And this looked like an interesting story to double click on. So Zudio is all about giving the best value to the consumers. So you'll have products starting from like 29 rupees. You have their perfumes selling for 99, t-shirts at 150. The whole point of the Zudio store is like everything is available to you below 999. So it's all about giving the extreme value propositions to your customers. However, we investors are not so lucky right now. We are not getting the best bargain here. All the valuations are quite high. You have Trend, which owns the Zudio brand, at 131 times deal. So, sorry, but we are getting the expensive end of the deal. You have DMart at 100 times, you have Vishal Megamart at 90 times. Even the foreign players, Costco and Walmart, even though they grow at a much more slower rate, like Costco would be at around 10%, Walmart at about 4-5%, they are still also at a very high PE relative to the countries. So, the Indian consumption story. So, in the start of every investor presentation, every annual report of any consumer companies, they all talk about the Indian consumption story. You'll have a slide like this in every of the presentation. This is from the ABFRL Investor Day presentation. So again, the same story. GDP per capita is rising. Your Indian consumption is growing. Discretionary spending is increasing. Women in workforce are increasing. You have nuclearization. You have urbanization. All of these stories playing out. But that's the thing, right? The India story was true 10 years ago, and the India story was true 20 years ago also. But in the last 20 years, we have seen a lot of retail cycles also. We have seen big companies who have succeeded and some big companies who have also gone bust. So while the India story is true, there's much more to it, and you can't just take that. You have to actually double click on the companies also. And India again, right? It's not as simple as it seems. So there's this book, Lilliput Land. It is written by Rama Bichaburkar. So she talks about how important it is to de-average India. Now, on the face value, it looks like, wow, we have such an amazing GDP growth, but most of our consumption is concentrated in such a small percentage of our population. And the bottom of the pyramid is huge, but it's so hard to actually access that market that even though it looks like, wow, there's so much happening, but it's not very easy to cater to the bottom of the pyramid in India. So this book is an amazing book. You should pick it up. It talks about how to look at India and what how the small is driving the India's consumption. India has certain heterogeneous population that everyone here, almost every city, every town have their own nuances. Every religion, your every region has their own festivals that leads to different seasonal sales also. So you have to be very, very local in order to cater to these things. And how do you go about that? That's where it gets interesting. So it's a good book. We won't go into too much detail. Now, if you look at the overall market, the retail market is about, this data is according to FY23. So it's about $918 billion. Out of that, 62% is food and groceries. That's the largest segment. And that continues to be mostly unorganized. About 92% is unorganized. The apparel segment, that's 8.2%. Over there, 53% is unorganized. 24% is organized and about 22% is online. So online has grown really well in the apparel segment, and your unorganized segment has come down quite a lot. And if you just look at the value part of it, not considering the food and groceries, that's about $111 billion. In that, about 80% is unorganized. And over here in value retails, it's actually much more unorganized than the overall market. So about 77% is unorganized and about 9% is 9.7% is online. Now, what are the retail challenges? So normally, most of the retailers, they usually do 2 seasons. You have your spring, summer, and you have your autumn, winter. And they have these end of season sales already planned, Jan and July, which are the main end of season sales seasons. So most of these people, they release a collection twice a year. There are companies who do it 4 times a year, and there are people like Zara who does not believe in a season, and every month is a season for them. So, why only 2 seasons, right? The steps in delivering a fashion season is quite long, and there are a lot of players who get involved. Most of the retailers are not fully vertically integrated. So, you have to depend not only on your manufacturer who will actually design your clothing, you have to also depend on your manufacturer's supplier who gives your material. So there's a lot of external players involved with this little control that you have. While planning a season, the first step is you analyze the trend, figure out what is doing good. You plan your assortments according to the trends. You design it, and do the concept development. You do the prototyping, the sample production, and then you do the sample selection and create your buy plan. Once that is done, you have to supply chain coordination, visual merchandising, figuring out how your store is going to look. Then you supply to the store, and then you have your in-season execution. So it's a long process, and this normally ends up taking a lot of time. So only about 13% are able to do this whole thing in up to 5 months. Most of the players have to have a lead time of from 6 months to more than 12 months. So that's a huge, huge time that's going. And when you're forecasting so far in advance, there are a lot of problems that come inherent with that. So, what does wrong forecasting lead to? Some styles end up selling fast. Now you designed it, some styles picked up, they're selling really well. But when that happens, you can have size breakages. Maybe some in the start of the season it picks up really well, and but some of the sizes get out of stock. So a lot of broken sizes. That's one of the biggest problems that most of the retailers have. So this was a study done by Vector Consulting where they took 100 retail players and asked them this question and asked them what percentage of styles gets broken into size sets and stores. So about 47% said that about 21 to 40% of their SKUs end up having broken sizes. Now with broken sizes, the problem is that you go into a store, you like some styles. After roaming the entire store, you finally find that one t-shirt that you like and it's not available in your size. It's a bad consumer experience. And when that happens, you wouldn't want to come there again. And that leads to loss of sales. So most of the times, even though a style is doing really well, if those if there's a size breakage, they end up putting it in the bag so that that bad customer experience doesn't happen, and then they end up in end of season sale. The other problem is that some styles don't sell as well as you thought because again you're planning so far in advance. Maybe the trend is not relevant anymore. So your full because of that, your full price sale through falls. So most of the products end up getting discounted. So in that, about 44% said that 51 to 60% of the products have full price realization. That means about 40% are ending on discount. 40% of your entire collection. That has a huge impact on your margins. Now, the other problem that they have is on time delivery. So most of these are paced in advance, but they might not actually get it in time. About 61% said that only 75 to 85% of the stock is received on time. That means like 50 to 25% of your stock is not even coming in. And you already done your visual merchandising, you already have a look prepared for the stores, and you only have a limited period in which you can sell that entire thing. And that's not happening. So an average delay is about like 2 weeks to 3 weeks. So that's a long period. That's 3 weeks lesser than what you would have been able to sell. So this is the vicious cycle that happens, right? This pressure to plan earlier so that you get on-time deliveries. But because you're planning so far in advance, there's more forecast uncertainty. Because there's more forecast uncertainty, there might be some products who flop and then they're forced to sell in end of sales. And some might be hits, but there might be sign breakages. So again, that leads to bad customer experience. And again, they're forced to sell at end of season sale. That leads to margin erosion, poor ROI, and the whole cycle just continues. Now, there are some tactics that they use to overcome the long lead time. So they might adjust the original allocation, replenish the sales during the season, interstore transfers, move it from one store to another that is doing well, and liquidate the slow movers. But again, it's not that easy, right? Now, a single brand would have about 100 to 400 stores. Each store has about 30 to 40 merchandising grid. Each grid has about 100 to 300 styles. That's not including the colors and the sizes. And so that's a lot of products that you're dealing with. So it's not as easy. So the core conflict that it comes out to in fashion is whether you develop styles well in advance of the season so that you can ensure on-time deployment, and that could lead to full price realization, or you develop styles closer to the season that helps you launch relevant styles, and that leads to full price realization. The players were doing both. So you have Primark. So Primark believes in the slow cycle. Their main objective is to get their products at the cheapest possible price. So they source most of the products from Asian countries, and they have a longer lead time, so they normally place their orders during off season. Let the they and off when there are not that many orders for them, and get the best possible price. Most of the products are also transferred only via sea, so that's the cheapest mode of transportation. So they go by that way. They're okay with the 6 to 8 months because they have more classic designs and they don't care about being that fashion forward. And they do quite well. On the other side, you have Zara. So Zara has about 45% of their sourcing happens in Europe itself, in Europe and Africa, because the whole point is to get it as fast as possible. Still launch styles closer to the season, see what is working. If something is good, if there's some designs that's a hit, then they want to get it from design to on shelf as fast as possible. They have been able to do this for as long as 2 to 3 weeks, but the average is about 6 to 12 weeks. It's what they operate on, and they have core products like basic white tees and all that you would always find in Zara. For that, they're okay with sourcing it from somewhere far away. But for the trendier designs, they want to source it from nearby regions so that they charge a premium also for that. But it just helps get you better inventory turns. At the end, it's all about getting better inventory turns and better full price realization. So these are the inventory turns of some of the Indian players. So I've kept DMart only for the reference with Vishal Mega Mart, but DMart has a really high inventory turn, but that's also because they have food and grocery. That's the biggest segment. If you look at only the apparel players, Inditex India, this is just the India entity, they have been able to do about a 7 times inventory turns. That's amazing. You have Trend at about 5.3 and Vishal Mega Mart at about 4.6. And most of these players do about 1.5 to 2.6 inventory turns here. If you look at the entire India retail space and how it has evolved over the years, in 1995, you had your Shoppers Stop and Lifestyle, which had just launched their formats. And there were a lot of players that were coming into the market, like Pantaloons, Reliance Retail, Max, Vishal Mega Mart, Westside. But all of them were very much new and they hadn't really gotten into a particular segment. They're still finding which area they're going to play in. In 2010 is when more value retailers started coming in, more regional players, and there was a proper segmentation that started to happen. With the entry of these more value retailers, they pushed up Pantaloons and Westside into an economy and mid retailer. And from 2015 to present, you have, the change that have happened now is you have bigger conglomerate entering into the value space. So you have Tata with Zudio, you have ABFRL with Style Up, you have Reliance with Ustra. So you have these bigger players who are now entering the value segment, which is mainly regional players before. So the value retailers of India. So this map only covers V2 Retail, Style Bazaar, V-Mart, Vishal Mega Mart, and Zudio. We'll look at them individually, but this is the overall landscape with just these 5 brands. Looking at them because they're listed players, and they have about 2,000 stores pan India. I want to first look at the strategies of these value retailers because that's where it gets interesting. It's all about how they manage and how they save their operating expenses. So, one of the three biggest costs that any retailer has is your employee cost, your rent, and your advertising. So, it's all about how you are able to control these costs. So rent is on the rise, and if you just look at some of this data about the rents in major retail areas, it's really high. So South Extension Delhi would be anywhere between 800 to 1,000 rupees per square feet. Linking Road is about 815 to 920 rupees per square feet. MG Road, Bangalore is about 250 to 350 per square feet. Indanavar is also in the same range. So, in the main areas, the rent will always be high. So, most of the value retailers, they don't want to be in the main area. Now, you won't find a Zudio on Linking Road, but you'll find one in Marol, Andheri. And so they don't choose the main areas. It's about controlling the rent cost for them, right? So they would rather be in smaller areas. Now this is a normal Zudio store, so the other cost is advertisement cost. Zudio does not incur any advertisement cost, but they do believe in letting the store be the advertisement itself, right? They build this big store that instantly attract. They'll open in your neighborhood. They'll have this amazing structure, and they let the store only be the billboard for them. Another strategy is that your employee cost is really high, so you want to have as less employees on the floor as possible. So this is something that V2 does. So they try to hang most of their products just like that. It avoids the folding time that an employee would have to give to keep the store organized. They prefer hanging it all. This is on DMart, but it's something that all value retailers do is cluster-based expansion. So they prefer to go deep and then wide. It's all about how you manage the supply chain, right? If you had a scattered area where you were somewhere in the north and then in the east, west, managing that supply chain becomes a task. But if you're in one region, it becomes much better to and much more economical to actually do it. So this is how DMart has done it, and most of the value retailers that have the same strategy. And private labels. So that's something that most of the value retailers getting in. It helps them organize their product also quite well and give it a nice theme. They have more control. In this way, they can also build loyalty with their customers. Otherwise, they have no differentiation. So private label has become a huge play in value retail. If you just look at Zudio, so Zudio currently has about 765 stores in about 235 cities. They are talking about adding about 100 to 150 stores the next year. And Zudio, if you see, has a pan-India presence, but mostly concentrated over here in the west and in the south. This is another image of the Zudio store. So their average size is about 7,000 to 12,000 square feet. And the average capex cost is about 3 to 4 crores. Zudio also follows a FOCO model, that's franchisee owned and company operated. They want to maintain the customer experience should be in their hand, but they like to get in franchisee partners to make it more asset light, and they're mainly there as an investor, not as someone who takes operational decisions. This is Vishal Megamart. Vishal Megamart has about 696 stores. They're biggest player after Zudio, and they're present in about 458 cities. Again, their concentration is mainly in the north, east, and south. They're not that present in the west region. So this is how a normal Vishal Megamart store looks like. So Vishal Megamart also has FMCG and general merchandising. So FMCG is about 28%, general merchandising is about 28%, and apparel is about 44%. So what they do is they use FMCG as a way to get in people, and then they cross-sell apparel to them. So FMCG gets them the volume, apparel gets them the margin. And the store is also structured in such a way. On the ground floor, you'll have apparel. On the first store, you'll have general merchandising, and on the second floor is where they will keep FMCGs. So most people will come for FMCG, but they'll have to go through the entire store. Vishal Mega Mart also has some very interesting strategies that they use. One of them is, again, in the supply chain management. Um, so what they do is they don't they try to keep as minimal as stock in the back room of the store. So every store has a back room where they keep excess inventory, right? That they get stock. So Vishal Mega Mart does not do that. They have a regional warehouse where they keep most of the products, and every morning they do a sort of a milk run to all the stores and uh, give them whatever is required. They do that because the cost of keeping the inventory at store would be about 60 rupees per square feet, where the same cost of keeping in the warehouse is about 10 rupees a square feet. So they're saving money there. That's one of the strategies that Vishal Mega Mart does. And then you have V2 Retail. V2 Retail is a much smaller player. It has about 189 stores. It's present in 150 cities, mainly a East focused player. They have an expansion plan of adding about 100 stores next year. So, this is how a typical V2 store looks like. 85% of it is private label, and the capex costs about 2.2 crores, including inventory. Uh, V2 also has some interesting strategies that they apply. So they have this discounting thing. It's all about how you are able to turn your inventory faster, right? So they identify slow movers within 2 weeks. If a product does not sell in 2 weeks, they immediately put it on a 30% discount. After that, if it still doesn't sell after a month, they put it at a 50% discount. And if the product's still not selling after 2 months, they put it at a 70% discount. So it's all about, they want to get rid of all the slow movers, because that place that the slow mover is taken could be, you can have a better style that would sell faster. They're just doing that because they want to focus on volume rather than margin, because they believe the faster they're able to turn the inventory, they'll be able to do better. You also have V-Mart and Style Bazaars. So V-Mart is mainly present in the north and the east region. They have also acquired Unlimited. With that, they have gotten about 85 stores, but it's mainly in the south. So they are also turning out to be more of a pan-India player now. You have Style Bazaar that is mainly concentrated in the east side. They have got 214 stores in 174 cities. Uh, Style Bazaar has a much more regional collection, and for them, seasonality also you can see, like Durga Puja is a really big thing for them. They carry more ethnic wear and saris also. So this is how Style Bazaar store looks like, and this is how V-Mart store looks like. Now you also have the bigger conglomerates that had entered into the space, right? There have been a lot of players who have entered since Zudio. So Zudio entered in September 2016. After that, you have had Reliance be enter with Yusta in the same segment. All of them mostly entered in 2022, 2023, so all fairly recent players. You have Style Union, which was launched by the Bianis. You have Style Up, which is an ABFRL thing, and Intune, which is launched by Shopper Stop. So they have in the limited amount of time they have added quite a number of stores, and they have some good expansion plan also. Studio plan to add about 150 to 200. You said one of the press releases they had said that their target by being by in 1,000 plus stores by 2026. Now that's a huge thing. Whether it can be reached or not, we'll see. Style Union is talking about adding about 60, 70 stores. Style Up about 40, 50. Intune about 40, 60. There have been some rationalization. There was a little slowdown this year. So Intune, if you look back into the earlier con calls, like Q1 of last year, they were talking about adding about 100 stores, but that has rationalized to about 40, 60. These are how the stores look like. That's Intune, Style Union, Yusta, and Style Up. So Yusta and Style Up have a more Western collection. They're more youth focused. Style Union has a lot of ethnic wear also, and kids focused. Intune is very family focused, and kids is one of the largest segment. Intune, with its Stop but Stop, they also go the other way. Like most of the value retailers, they don't prefer being in the mall. They do have a small percentage in mall, but they don't prefer. But Intune, majority of the stores are in mall rather than high street. They believe they're able to get more footfalls that way and get better revenues, and it's working for them. So this is segmental share across the players. So Vishal Mega Mart is the only one that's more diversified, and only 44% is apparel, but most of these are mainly apparel players only. The small focus on general merchandising. So the number of stores, right? The number of stores that they have been adding are also being quite high. So like we saw, Zudio has the most number of stores that has been growing at a CAGR of 57%. And most of the older ones are not growing that fast. But your value size segment, the last 5 years, they have added a lot of stores. And the store addition is equal to higher revenue growth. So that was something that I wanted to highlight. While Zudio has added stores at about 57%, their revenue has grown at about 87%. That's true for most of the players, that they are able to grow the revenue faster than the store addition. So most of it is not coming from store addition, but there's some growth also happening. Uh, there's the same store sales growth. V2 Retail currently is the one who is doing the highest same store sales growth. Revenue per square feet, if you look at, again, DMart will stand out because of the food and grocery segment. But if you look at the apparel players, Zudio is leading it by about 18,000. They don't disclose it. They have said that Trent has done about 16,000. This number that the company disclosed is a roughly calculated number. There's about 18,000 revenue per square feet. Westside is about 1,200. Shoppers Stop is also around that range. And most of these value players do about 8,000 to 12,000. The average store size, again, DMart is a different league, so you won't look at that. But Vishal Mega Mart is about 17,500. That's also because they have a FLT segment also. Zudio is about 12,000, and most of the other value retailers are from 5,000 to 10,000 square feet. Private label share, Zudio and Westside 100% private label. And most of them are actually been increasing. Like V2 has been one of the players that have increased their private label share quite fast. Even Style Bazaar, it used to be about 20% a couple of years back, and it's now at 45%. V2 also take it completely to 100%. Um, This is the average transaction value and the basket size. So if you look at the value players, the average transaction value is anywhere between 500 to 1,500. That's about how much the average customer spends. And it has about 2 to 4 SKUs that they buy per shopping. Of course, the number is bigger for DMart and Vishal Mega Mart was the reason that I already mentioned. And Zudio Style Union, they are in the little bit on a higher side. They are able to do about 1,500 to 2,500 between that range. Now, if you see how they are spread across, so across tier 3 cities, you see that most of these regional players, they are more concentrated in the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities with minimal to no present in the mega metro or the metro cities. But Zudio, Sally, Styla, Intune, they are more focused on the metro cities, and they are now expanding into the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities. And also, if you see over here, that most of the value players are in the east and north. That's where majority of the concentration is. But you also have a few players who are coming in south. That's where there are not that many players, but you have Stallion that's 100% south. You have Max at about 50%, Intune, Ustar. All of them are more south focused. If you look at the gross margins, so again, because they are value players, the gross margins will be on the lower side. They typically range between the 30 to 40% range. Your EBITDA margins, even though your gross margins are lower, like Trent is leading it at about 15% EBITDA margins, and you have a couple of value players in the upper side of the EBITDA margins. Even your PAN margin, again, across all the players, Trent is clearly far ahead, followed by Vishal Mega Mart. Your ROE is also, again, Trent is leading the pack. Similarly with your ROCs. So value retail, even though your gross margins are lower, they're able to get more value out of it. Now, this is something that again I'm shamelessly borrowing from Ronak and his presentation. He spoke about this for capital return, and there was this cycle that he mentioned, like how most of cyclical business work. So first, you have improving the sub. You have most relevant supply coming into the market, and that causes your you start making better returns. And then you have new entrants that are attracted by those high returns, and everyone is optimistic. And then you have rising competition that causes that return to fall, and then the business just decline. You have consolidation coming in. So we had Zudio who got in that relevant demand, and now we have a lot of new entrants with a lot of large expansion plans. Now we have to see when we move on to the next part of the cycle. Will we even move on to it? Will the demand expand to meet that kind of supply that is coming in? Is that kind of supply, are we ready to absorb the kind of supply that is coming in? They're going to do well. We'll just have to see and find out. And yeah, that's it. Thank you. Any questions?
So some people were not clear on the term SKU. If you can just expand on that and explain it so that they get context for the presentation. Thanks.
So SKU would be like stock keeping units. Sorry. And that's basically each style, right? That you would be referring to it as SKUs.
Hi, great presentation. So, can you please touch upon both the advantages and drawbacks of a FOCO and a COCO model, please?
So, FOCO model just helps you make your business asset light. So that's the biggest advantage you're getting. You're getting someone who's taking the capital risk, making your balance sheet much more lighter. That lighter balance sheet helps you get better returns. So FOCO helps you with that. And you while at the same time, FOFO में क्या होता है? If I'm also considering FOFO where it's franchisee owned and franchisee operated, you are not controlling your customer experience, which is very important. So most of the players prefer like, okay, I'll just make it capital light, but I want to control my customer experience because retail is all about face to face, right? S- So because of that, they won't go for FOFO, but FOCO is good because it just makes your balance sheet light.
And apart from the capital intensive nature of a COCO business, any other drawbacks that you see in that model?
No, it just take more of your capital. You have more of your capital logged into it, and you also have real estate risk that can come in. So that would just be one of the concerns, but no, that not that much.
And typically, how much ROIC would a FOCO model be making, like the franchisee as a percentage of the top line?
So what I've read, like you're talking about the returns that a franchisee guy would make.
Yeah.
So for Trend, they make about 20%. That's what I read last.
On the invested capital?
Yeah. Mm.
So, payback period of roughly what, 3 years?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So we have seen that many stores were growing at a very impressive rate, like 57% in the case of Zudio, I think.
Studio. Yeah.
I wanted to ask what's your insights and view on store closures as well. Like we've seen a Zara store close down in Fort, for example.
Hmm.
So how should one perceive that when a company starting shutting down stores in its prime areas?
So one thing that we must know, and I think Dornak had mentioned that in his last presentation, that not all store closures are the same. Some of them are done for operational reasons. So something like the Zara store that was here, the rent was really high. And that kind of rent is not justified. So location is very important, but your rent cost has to be controlled. Can't be more than 10 to 15% of your revenue. So based on that, that was there. But there have been closures on the bigger side. So you have had Pantaloon stores that have shut down. A lot of Pantaloon stores have shut down. Reliance Retail has shut down a lot of store closures that had a lot of layoffs. That is happening, but that's on the premium side. So those players are struggling a little bit. But what they're talking about is like they want to just make it more operationally better. Most of them are closing down older stores, opening up new ones. The net addition has still been higher. except for the case of iPhones.
So you're saying that we should see it in two ways. Some are doing it as a strategic move
Hmm.
to control unnecessary overpaying in some locations, and some are just struggling. That's why they're.
Yeah.
So, so as I understand, there are two categories. One like shops or studios, they are purely into clothing.
Mm-hmm.
So they have this size cut problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that is quite big because recently I went to Bata store also,
Mm.
and I must have gone to 5 Bata stores. So if you like the style, you don't have a size. If you
Yeah.
get the size, you don't have a style.
Mm.
So this is happening in Shoppers Stop. This is very frequently happening. So do you have any idea how they are, trying to address this issue?
So most of them are trying to do more tech integration to get help them forecast it better and get more trendier styles using lot of softwares have come up now. When I went through the list, there are huge softwares. Most of the companies on the con calls are constantly talking about how they're integrating AI into it, how they're using the softwares to help them analyze better. That's one of the initiatives that they have taken on. They've also started to cut down the lead time and get it closer to date and have more newer sourcing, that even though if something is out, they'll be able to replenish it faster. But there have been some things that they've been talking about. We should maybe see it happen.
Okay.
Hmm.
And one last thing. Uh, Last time, I think in this forum, PPFS take all the stakeholder very seriously. Last time I said uh, one should not identify somebody on the basis of seniority or juniority. So they have promoted you and made you manager research. So that's a good thing.
Great presentations, Jingle. So, to supply all these people, there has to be corresponding improvement in the supply chain, the factories, automation of factories, and upgradation. So, could you throw some light on what's happening on that side?
Yeah. So right now, because of the kind of players that are coming in, there's a huge supply constraint also, right? You have to manage. There are only so many people in the near shore. Most of it, like in the south, you have like Tirupur and all of these places. So what these companies normally do, like someone like Zudio, they'll help give financial aid to those people, the contract manufacturers, help them set up factories faster, grow them, help them in how they would want their factory setup, give them captive orders so that they know like this is the kind of demand that is coming in, so I can expand based on that. There are players who are helping them expand even though they're not setting their own factories. But yeah, that's something that's happening.
There are very few successful manufacturers listed on the stock market.
Eh,
It's an indication that we have very few good suppliers.
there are a lot of players which are not listed also, but most of them they prefer to have much more smaller ones. They're able to get like smaller contacts in, get it faster. So there are advantages to the smaller players also that most of these people talk about. But yeah, that's not that many listed players.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hmm. It's quite a fragmented market.
Anyone on Zoom with any questions? Please unmute yourself.
I don't have question, but I miss spending physical effort today.
I have one question. Hi. Thank you for going in deep on retail. See, to some extent, we can understand the kind of valuation the Indian companies are trading at, given the high growth rates, at least from a revenue front. But is there any reason why Costco and Walmart trading at 50 times and 45 times, given a very very low top line? Uh, any reason that you you attribute to those, or it is just purely the capital efficiency that is allowing them to trade at such a high valuation, given that there is no uh, third player or a fourth player?
So one thing is that there's a moat around those players also, right? They're so big that the second largest competition is really far back. That's one thing that people like. Uh, for Costco, Costco is very slow in adding. So in terms of growth, it still has a lot of players globally available. So most people believe that it can continue to grow at that 10% rate for the next 10-20 years. So it's the stability of the growth that investors seem to like. But for me, also, those valuations are really expensive.
Got it. So it's more like not having a next best player giving them the premium.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
So there are a lot of, I believe there are a lot of e-commerce players also who are competing with these guys like Meesho and Myntra, etc. So which are pure online marketers, and I'm sure they are competing with these guys.
Hmm.
Your young generation is very often ordering online, and in India, as of now, you can order as much as you want and you return what you don't like.
Hmm.
So what is your view on have you looked at the growth of those guys and how they are faring compared to these offline guys?
So offline is a completely different model. It's more economically viable. That's why Zudio does not go online. But I think online also has a large opportunity, right? You mentioned that India is extremely fragmented, and your top quadrant is not just in the metros; it's spread across the rural. But sometimes it becomes very hard to cater to those spread out geographies. There's so many pin codes where we don't even have a retail store, proper big retail store. So in that times, online really helps to unite India. It can reach everywhere. So in that way, online is amazing. Uh, but again, for some of the players, the economics just doesn't work. Like Studio says that we don't have that kind of knowledge to do it online, especially for value, where the product price is really small, right? So we can't really cater to return needs and all of that in that. And in value segment, you wouldn't trust something that's coming for 150 rupees online, like a t-shirt that you buy. But if you go in the store and you choose it, then you'll buy it and you'll be less likely to return. It's just the economics of value retail works better in offline. But then again, you have Shein who has done really well, like value plus fast fashion.
Which one?
Shein, globally. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jinal.
All right. Thank you.
Whenever things got rough, I always remember what my father used to say.
Running a business does test a man, my son. There are ups and downs, glorious highs, and sometimes a low that leaves you feeling defeated.
The character of a man and the character of a business are not very different, are they?
Yes. But when the chips are down, we must stand up, dust ourselves off, and motor on.
Volatility. It's a funny thing. It makes you question yourself and wonder if you've made all the right decisions.
Sure, you can question some of your decisions, but stay steadfast on your goals.
Dad always said, there are no shortcuts and no quick profits.
There are no free lunches, are there? There is only one
right way.
At PPFAS, we think like Rahul and his father. That volatility is a fact of running a business. And buying equity shares is like owning a part of that business. We use value investing principles to manage your money. This means we invest in the right businesses at reasonable prices and for a longer term.
PPFAS Mutual Fund. There's only one right way. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.